Hey there, Lorcana lovers. My name's Lizard, and today I'm going to show you this really fun dog-themed deck. For all my fellow dog lovers out there, we finally have the cards we need to build a competitive doggy-themed deck. And the best part is, this deck is actually pretty good. So let's get into it. Okay guys, so once again we are using the website dreamborn.inc to showcase this deck for you, and then I will show you some games on Pixelborn to showcase, exactly how to play the deck. This website is just so great. I've said it before, but it tells you the prices of the cards, so you'll know exactly how much you need to pay to make a physical version of the deck. It gives you these pie charts over here to show you the different colors. You see we mostly have amber, 46 cards are amber, and 14 are steel. That gives you an inkable to uninkable pie chart here. Luckily, we only have 11 cards that are uninkable, so that's great. 49 cards are inkable. And our characters, we have 53 characters, 3 songs, and 4 locations. So those are all really useful tools to help you, decide if your deck's balanced enough or different changes you might have to make if your uninkable count is too high. So I really enjoy this website. Let's start out with the absolute star of this deck. This 1-drop eclipses all other 1-drops in the game currently. This is our boy Pluto, friendly pooch. His value is just astronomical. Yes, you just heard a series of Pluto puns, but you know what? I'm a dad, so that's allowed. Anyway, let's move on. You pay 1 ink less for the next character you play this turn. You do have to exert him to get that ability. He doesn't have any attack, but he does have 2 defense. So we're running 4 copies of him. We're running 4 copies of Stitch, New Dog. We are running 2 copies of the Dalmatian Puppy, 4 copies of this Dalmatian Puppy. You can pick whichever ones you want. These are fun cards because you may have up to 99 copies of Dalmatian Puppy Tail Wagger in your deck. We're only running 6 copies just because I want to keep our count at 60 cards for the consistency reasons. We are running 4 copies of Piglet. We're running 4 copies of Rapunzel. She's nice because she does have 4 willpower, which means she survives a giant Tinkerbell or a Grab Your Swords. You'll notice a lot of the 2-drops that we're running in this deck have to have at least, 3 willpower because Steel destroys this deck otherwise. Already, if they get a double Grab Your Swords or a Tinkerbell into a Grab Your Swords, this deck does struggle. However, keeping our 2-drops with at least 3 willpower does help. You see we've got 4 copies of Simba. This is a bodyguard card, so he's really nice to have early on. If your 1-drop, if your first character you can get out is a Pluto, and then you can on your second turn hopefully either get out another Pluto, or you could get out a Stitch and a Simba, who can now guard your Plutos. That's a really nice line whenever you're able to make that happen. We're running 4 copies of Wendy Darling. Once again, she's got that 3 willpower. She quests for 2. We're running 4 copies of Hercules, 3 willpower for him as well. Same with Prince Eric, 4 copies. 4 copies of the Prince, another bodyguard. 2 copies of Beast. This is great for card draw. This deck does sometimes struggle with card draw unless you can get your Stitch Rockstar card draw engine online, which is absolutely one of the most advantageous lines of play you can make with this deck. It's just your opponent usually knows that that's coming, so they'll do anything they can to stop you from being able to initiate your Stitch Rockstar card draw engine. But when it happens, it feels great because you wind up just flooding the board with 2-drop characters. You see, whenever you play a character with cost 2 or less, you may exert them to draw a card. So the idea is we're running a lot of 2-drop characters. So if you can get this Stitch online, and if you also have this location, Pride Lands, you see here, if you have a Prince or a King character here, you pay 1 less to play characters, 1 less ink that is. So essentially, if you have that in play, you have your Stitch in play, and you have one of these Prince characters at that location, you see we have a lot of Princes to make that possible. Simba's a Prince, Hercules, Eric, the Prince, Beast also. If you get any of those characters at this location, and you have your Pluto out, and the Stitch out, or one or the other, primarily the Stitch actually is what I'm referring to right now, because then you can drop a card and then exert it, draw a card, and then you can play another 2-drop, exert it, draw a card, and you're basically just going to keep playing 2-drops for free because you have this out, and you could potentially have 2 of those out rather, and then a Pluto. However you want to make it happen. My point is, it's really easy to flood the board with characters, making this a really aggressive deck. And the Perdita card that we're running 3 of, she also really helps with this, because if they do hit you with a grab your swords or any kind of removal, then you're going to have a lot of 2-cost characters in your discard pile. You see, when you play this character, and whenever she quests, you may play a character with 2 costs or less from your discard for free. So she's a really awesome tempo card. Like I said, we have so many 2-drops. By the time you're playing her, you're almost guaranteed to be getting another character on the board, and for as long as she's in play and continues questing, you're going to continuously replenish your board with characters. What's really nice is whenever you're able to continuously spam the Simba bodyguard out of your discard, because every time he's just going to continue to protect the cards you like, the cards you want to have in play most. And like for instance, this Piglet is another card that benefits from having multiple characters on the board. Well, while you have 2 or more other characters in play, this character gets +2 lore. So once again, our game plan is to get Pluto into play at first, mulligan real heavy to at least get a Pluto or a Stitch in your opening hand, because these are what are going to make the deck move forward and ultimately win you the game with a really aggressive style of flooding the board with characters and questing to victory. So, oh, you know what? We're also running 3 copies of the Bare Necessities. This is just insurance for the grab your swords, as well as a be prepared later in the game can really screw up your game plan. So you've got to have a gut feeling, you know, of when to actually cast this song, because sometimes you can brick on it, they won't have anything in their hands. So I would save a card like this until you have a lot of characters on the board and you find more value trying to protect them by discarding cards from your opponent's hand. And it also shows you their hand, so that's a double whammy. Definitely a lot of value from the Bare Necessities in this deck. So, without further ado, let's show you some Pixelborn gameplay, and you can see exactly how to pilot this deck. Now, like I said, you really want to try to get this Stitch card draw engine online. It doesn't always happen, but you'll see in these games there's still many ways that you can outmaneuver and outpace your opponent to 20 lore. So let's check this out. Okay, so our first game is against Amethyst Steel. This is actually a pretty quick game because I think they're going to be running the Jafar, and they didn't get what they needed. But you see I'm going to mulligan heavily to keep that Pluto and hopefully get a Stitch. Did not get the Stitch, but I do have 2 copies of the 1-drop Pluto, so that is awesome. We are first going to make some ink. I think in this situation our best bet is to ink one of the puppies, and we will then play the Pluto. Okay, so they have the Blue Fairy. They're going to try to start up a card draw engine early. We did get our Stitch, which is awesome. So let's play another Pluto, and then I'll play that Stitch as well. Leave everything non-exerted so that they're protected until we get a much more established board state here. We got a second Stitch, but we don't need him. So let's go ahead and ink that Stitch. Let's exert our Plutos to bring out a Beast on turn 3. That's just a really, really great board presence, and now we're going to have extra card draw for our next turn. You see he inked one of his Jafars, so he's definitely playing a Jafar deck, which can run away really fast if they have the Whole New World and Jafar in play. But we're going to ink this other Dalmatian puppy, and let's get a Bodyguard in play, and go ahead and take out the Rafiki. We have enough ink to get a Prince Erican, utilizing Pluto's ability, and now you see we have 5 characters on the board. They have 2. We are tied for ink, but so far the game is definitely in our favor for tempo. They've got the Fox. They're going to go ahead and probably, they had to go for the Bodyguard, but I'm sure they wanted to go for the Stitch to try to stop me from another card draw engine. We'll go ahead and ink the Rapunzel and bring in the Perdita, allowing me to bring my 2 cost out of my discard. And the Eric is nice with this Challenger +2. We're going to clean up that Madam Mim Fox and quest with everybody else. At this point, they're probably trying hard to set up a board state where they can play the Jafar in a whole new world. You see the Beast is still allowing us our 2-card draw. We've got the location in play that we need, so now we just have to move a prince there and we would have had our card draw. But you see they gave up pretty quickly and they must have just been frustrated that things weren't working out for them. But either way, we had that game in the bag. We were ready to set up our prince on the Pride Lands location and just run away with it with our next few turns. Okay, next up we're going to have a match against the Popsicle control deck. That's Ruby Sapphire. And once again, you want your opening hand to at least have a baby Pluto or a new dog Stitch. So mulligan all of those away. And we did get a Pluto and we actually got a Rockstar Stitch. So the first play you almost always want to make is getting that Pluto down on turn 1 to allow you to have a much more advantageous turn 2. If you're able to get at least 2 more cards into play, that's great. We're only going to be able to get 1 more into play, but having that Prince Bodyguard is awesome. A 3-cost card on turn 2, you still can't complain about that. And now our Pluto is going to be shielded from any rush characters. He did not have a rush character though. Now I think it's probably best for us to just ink the Stitch since we didn't get the new dog yet. Our Piglet will be able to quest for 3 next turn, being that we have the amount of characters on the board that's necessary to trigger that, and we still have our Bodyguard in play. So if he attacks, he's gonna have to run into that Prince before anything else. Already we have a pretty decent board state, and he will take 2 cards to eliminate that Prince. I'm okay with that. The more time they waste taking out my characters, the better, because every turn I can just quest a little bit more and make my way closer and closer to that 20 lore that we need. We'll quest for 3 with the Piglet. Now we don't have the Bodyguard, so they're either going to target the Piglet. Yes, they're going to target the Piglet. They could have also targeted the Pluto. Wouldn't have been a bad choice for them. But they're going to draw some cards off their Flavershim. Our Beast is allowing us the double card draw, which is excellent. We did get a new dog Stitch, but honestly we don't need him because now we have enough ink to just go ahead and put the Rockstar in and save this card for next turn to get more card draw off our Rockstar Stitch. They do finally take out the Pluto, and we also drew a Perdita, which is excellent. Now we can just start spamming cards from our discard back into play, being that everything in there so far is a 2-cost. I will bring out the Piglet. Stitch would allow us to draw cards, however I don't want him to immediately take out that Piglet, so I'm just going to let my board state build up until I can quest for a significant amount of lore. Unfortunately he gets the Madam Medusa, which is a menace. He takes out the Beast. Now we're going to draw a couple cards off the Stitch engine. And we still haven't inked anything yet this turn. We'll bring out another card from the discard. You see how Perdita and Stitch just work so well together? Bringing a 2-drop back from your discard, being able to turn it sideways to draw a card. And just like that, we have a crazy amount of cards on the board. Now this would be an easy time for them to use Be Prepared, and they just might do that, which will be devastating. They do use Be Prepared, but we still have 3 cards in hand, and we're able to quickly get our board state back into a position where we can quest for a lot. As long as I get 1 more card in play next turn, our Piglet is going to be questing for 3. We drew into another Piglet. It would make sense to put a Pluto in play because he's a really great bodyguard. And now we have 2 bodyguards in play, 17 lore. We're threatening to win the game next turn. He does not have another Be Prepared. He can run the Maui into the Pluto and clean him up with the Queen of Hearts. However, he still has to deal with my Piglet. Granted, he can't quest for 3, but I've got another Piglet in hand and another Pluto, and all I needed to do was add those to the playing field, and we got our 3 lore from that Piglet. Okay, next we actually have another Sapphire Ruby Popsicle control deck. Now, once again, we're going to mulligan almost everything away. We will keep the Stitch and the bare necessities just because I would like to have it to potentially get rid of an early game Fishbone Quill or hang on to it potentially for a later game Be Prepared. We will get the Stitch into play. We also have the Rockstar Stitch, so we'll hopefully set up that card draw engine pretty early here. We have a Perdita in hand as well. She becomes a little bit more useful later on in the game, as you saw in the last matchup when we have a decent amount of characters in our discard. She can just generate those right back into play, and when the Stitch is also online, we're drawing cards from them as well. We're going to ink the Dalmatian puppy and play another Pride Lands. Those ones are harder for them to deal with. They've got 7 willpower, and this early on, they don't have a whole lot of stuff that can swing into that and deal with it immediately. They did put a Maui's Fishhook, which is excellent for dealing with heavier locations like the Pride Lands. You see he was just able to get his Grammatala to swing on it for 4. So that Maui's Fishhook is a really nice card that you see a lot now, because it can also give the opposing characters, or in this case my opposing character, evasive. But you see I moved the Simba to the Pride Lands. He now allows me to pay 1 less ink for my next card. And so next turn, as long as things go well, I will be able to shift down the Rockstar Stitch. He's going to go ahead and finish off that Pride Lands location. But for now, I will still have a pretty successful turn here. I'll get my Rockstar Stitch down. I don't have anything else to play to generate card draw, but we'll leave it at that. Keep 1 in my hand for insurance. Sometimes it is in your best interest to just keep your hand loaded and not worry so much about having ink. Like I said, this deck plays so many 2-drops that, you know, having more than 6 ink is just kind of unnecessary. So if you make your way up to 6 ink, that's generally all the more you'll need, especially when you have your cards like Pluto and Pride Lands that are just reducing the cost of playing characters anyway. But now we do have a decent amount of characters in our discard, so as long as I get an inkable card, and I do, we can get the Perdita in play and start bringing some of these characters back. No need to exert my bodyguard just yet, but next turn I will now be able to quest with Perdita and bring yet another character back into play. I can also play a Perdita and bring a character into play, so what I can do now is have Perdita generate 2 additional characters into play, allowing me to have an overwhelming board state. And I still have a bodyguard out, so they have to swing on that Simba before they can get to the Perdita. And at this point, I'm in position to win the game yet again, unless they have a Be Prepared or a way to clear off all of these characters. They're going to need to at least take out the Perdita, and they do. But we did draw into another Pluto, and we can shift this big Pluto onto him. We can't do anything with him this turn. However, we can still generate our bodyguard back into play off the Perdita. And now he's going to have the Be Prepared. And he did not. So you see, once again, once that Perdita gets into play, especially if you have a bodyguard in your discard, it's just so nice to keep bringing it right back into play. The Perdita and the Stitch just match up together so well, and their synergy, when it does happen, it feels great. Okay, and the last game I'll show you is up against an Amber Steel deck. I don't think this is the typical Amber Steel Songs deck, but even still, it's close enough to show you how this matchup would be. We're going to mulligan everything away to try to get our Pluto or a 1-drop Stitch. We did get the 1-drop Pluto, so once again, that's just usually always your best turn 1, is to get a Pluto into play. He is the secret weapon of this deck. And we pulled a second Pluto, so now we can get him in, and then an additional 2-drop card. And I do think it's probably in our best interest to play something with a higher willpower, just in case they're able to play, an aerial and search for that grab your swords, and then, by their turn 4, they're cleaning up our side of the board really quickly. They do not have a song for Cinderella to sing, so that's great. We will be able to utilize our Pluto once more, bring in a Prince Eric, go ahead and ink that stitch since we still haven't seen the rock star just yet. At this point, I'm expecting them to have some early removal, so I think I'd get more value out of Perdita, bringing cards back from my discard if they're able to remove them. You usually have to figure that going up against Steel, they are going to be playing a lot of removal, especially a Steel deck that you see Cinderella coming down on turn 1. She's got Singer 3, so they can be hitting you with, Strength of a Raging Fire, or Let the Storm Rage On. All those cards clean up basically every card in this deck pretty easily, except for the bigger cards like Perdita and the Bodyguard Pluto. We're going to ink the Bare Necessities just because I'm certain at this point they are playing some type of songs deck, so they probably are going to have more than one song in their hand, and I might not get the value out of the Bare Necessities that I need. So at this point, I thought it would be better just to build up my ink to hopefully outpace them, because it seems like they are also running a more aggro version of Amber Steel, having the Smee and the Prince. Okay, they're going to ink a Hercules. I still have one Pluto in play. Yeah, and see, they have the Piglet as well. So this is definitely a more aggro build of a Steel Songs deck. Now I have my Perdita. I can bring back my Piglet. And as long as I get another card to put into play next turn, I will have a Piglet that's questing for 3. And then a Perdita that's bringing another card back into play. So I'm guaranteed to have 3 cards next turn. Even if they were to have taken out that Pluto, my Perdita would have just brought him right back, and then I could have quested with Piglet. So at this point, I need something to help me in case they start to outpace me in lore. My Prince Eric has Challenger 3, so I'll be able to deal with just about any of their cards on board now, especially having that 1 damage on the Prince. He does have Resist 1, but next turn, my Prince Eric can definitely take out their Prince. And that will be necessary because there are times when you're going up against aggro that, if you make one misstep or miscalculation, they will wind up beating you to 20 lore. And that hurts, especially when, you might have the lead the entire game and you just had one little miscalculation, and then your next turn you lose. That's unfortunate. But so as you see, I'm going to take out their Prince Eric, or rather with my Prince Eric, I'm going to take out their Prince and just start cleaning up their end, allowing me to still have a pretty big board state. If they had to grab your swords right now, that would be devastating. However, they didn't play it. They're taking a little while to think. They do have a Let the Storm Rage On, but at this point, I still have a much stronger board state. Ooh, I draw into the Beast, which is going to allow me to draw even more cards next turn. And if they have no answer for this, then I'm definitely sure to win next turn, unless, of course, they have the Grab Your Swords. They did not. They are able to take out 1 Piglet, but that is just not enough for them to end the game. So, like you see, even up against another aggro deck, this deck does perform pretty well, especially if you get to go first and you have that Pluto in your opening hand. So to sum things up, guys, I really think this deck is highly competitive. You do have some bad matchups. Into Steel is mostly, probably the worst matchup, but ultimately it's just a really fun deck to play. Whenever you do get your Stitch engine and Perdita engine online, it almost feels like you're cheating. Being able to get that many characters on the board at once. Sometimes you really run away with it and your opponent concedes because there's no hope for them unless they have, the Grab Your Swords or, of course, the Be Prepared. So you notice the deck version I'm running does not include as many dogs as you could. Feel free to put more puppies in if you want to. I think it's a little bit more consistent, sticking to 60 cards, and I also favor the 2 drops that can quest for 2 over the puppies, but even still, those puppies are excellent synergy in this deck, being that they're 2 drops and they have 3 willpower, so they are surviving at least for a turn or 2. And if you're able, like I said, to get that Stitch and Perdita online, just flooding the board with any 2-drops, it's going to work in your favor. So once again, really fun deck. I'd love to know what you guys think. If you enjoy content like this, please consider subscribing to my channel. And as always, be kind and have a wonderful day.